What if anxiety is not something to cure, suppress, or escape from, but something to listen to? What if the unease you feel when facing choices, uncertainty, or silence is not a weakness, but a signal that you are standing at the edge of becoming yourself? Søren Kierkegaard, often called the father of existentialism, offers a vision of life that is both unsettling and deeply compassionate. He does not promise comfort, certainty, or easy answers. Instead, he offers honesty, and sometimes honesty is the most liberating gift of all. In this video, you will discover how Kierkegaard redefines anxiety, despair, and faith, not as enemies of a good life, but as essential guides toward authenticity, inner freedom, and a life truly lived from within. Søren Kierkegaard was born in Copenhagen in 1813, into a household marked by intense religiosity, guilt, and melancholy. His father was a deeply devout man, burdened by a sense of divine judgment and existential dread. From a young age, Kierkegaard was immersed in an atmosphere where inner life mattered more than external success, and where silence carried more weight than words. This upbringing shaped him profoundly. Unlike philosophers who focused on systems, logic, or universal truths, Kierkegaard turned inward. He was not interested in explaining the world. He was interested in understanding what it feels like to exist as an individual within it. Kierkegaard lived in a time obsessed with reason, progress, and collective ideals. Hegelian philosophy dominated intellectual life, promising that history itself was moving toward higher rational unity. Kierkegaard rejected this vision entirely. For him, the truth of existence is not found in grand systems or abstract theories, but in the lived experience of the single individual. You do not exist as a concept. You exist as a choice, a tension, a responsibility, and no philosophy, no institution, no ideology can live your life for you. Central to Kierkegaard's thought is the concept of anxiety. Unlike fear, which has a clear object, anxiety arises from possibility itself. You feel anxious not because something bad is happening, but because something could happen. Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. It emerges when you realize that your life is not predetermined, that you must choose, and that your choices matter. This realization is terrifying because it places responsibility squarely on your shoulders. But it is also what makes a truly human life possible. Modern culture treats anxiety as a malfunction, something to be numbed, medicated, distracted away. Kierkegaard saw it differently. Anxiety is a teacher. It reveals the space between who you are and who you could become. When you feel anxious, you are standing before possibility. The tragedy is not feeling anxiety. The tragedy is avoiding it, because avoidance leads to a life lived on autopilot, safe, predictable, and quietly empty. Closely related to anxiety is Kierkegaard's concept of despair. Despair, in his view, is not sadness. It is misrelation to the self. You are in despair when you refuse to be who you are, or when you try to be someone you are not. This can take many forms. Some people despair by losing themselves in roles, achievements, or social approval. Others despair by withdrawing, refusing responsibility, or hiding behind cynicism. The most dangerous form of despair is the one you are not even aware of, the quiet, normalized despair of living a life that does not truly belong to you. Kierkegaard believed that many people go through life without ever becoming a self. They follow paths laid out by society, family, or fear. They confuse busyness with purpose, conformity with safety, distraction with happiness. From the outside, such lives may look successful. From the inside, they feel hollow. Despair is the cost of avoiding the task of becoming yourself. One of Kierkegaard's most profound contributions is his description of the stages of life. The aesthetic stage is defined by pleasure, novelty, and immediate gratification. Life is lived for enjoyment, stimulation, and avoidance of boredom. While this stage can be exciting, it is ultimately unstable. Pleasure fades, novelty wears off, boredom returns. The aesthetic life collapses under its own weight because it lacks commitment and depth. The ethical stage emerges when a person chooses responsibility. Here, life gains structure, meaning, and continuity. Commitments matter. Choices are taken seriously. But even the ethical life has limits. Rules, duties, and moral systems cannot fully resolve the inner tension of existence. They cannot answer the deepest question, why be this self in this life with this burden of freedom? This leads to the religious stage, which Kierkegaard described not as institutional religion, but as a personal, inward relationship with meaning itself. At this stage, the individual confronts uncertainty directly. There are no guarantees, no proofs, no external validation. What Kierkegaard calls faith is not belief without doubt, but commitment in the presence of doubt. Faith is not certainty, it is courage. The famous concept of the leap of faith is often misunderstood. It is not an irrational jump into blind belief. It is the acceptance that some truths cannot be lived intellectually. They must be lived existentially. You do not reason your way into meaning, you choose it. And every meaningful choice involves risk. Kierkegaard's life mirrored his philosophy. His broken engagement to Regine Olsen is one of the most poignant examples. He loved her deeply, yet believed that marrying her would require him to betray his existential calling. The decision haunted him for the rest of his life. He did not present himself as a hero. He presented himself as a human being torn by responsibility. This honesty is what makes his philosophy so powerful. He does not speak from above life. He speaks from within it. In a world that glorifies certainty, Kierkegaard reminds us that uncertainty is unavoidable. The attempt to eliminate it leads not to peace, but to self-deception. True calm comes not from controlling life, but from relating to it truthfully. When you accept that anxiety is part of freedom, despair becomes a signal rather than a sentence. It tells you where you are misaligned. So how can Kierkegaard's philosophy be applied to everyday life? Start by paying attention to anxiety rather than suppressing it. Ask yourself what possibility it is pointing toward. Examine your choices honestly. Are they expressions of who you are or strategies to avoid discomfort? Reflect on where you may be living aesthetically, chasing distraction rather than depth, and consider what commitments you are avoiding out of fear. Kierkegaard invites you to slow down, to resist the pressure of becoming someone too quickly. Becoming a self is not a project to complete. It is a relationship to sustain. It requires patience, courage, and a willingness to stand alone at times. But in that solitude, something remarkable happens. Life becomes yours. He once wrote that life can only be understood backward, but must be lived forward. This insight captures the essence of his thought. You cannot wait for complete understanding before you act. Meaning reveals itself only through lived commitment. Waiting for certainty is itself a form of despair. As we come to the close of this reflection, take a moment to ask yourself, where in your life are you avoiding anxiety by avoiding choice? Where are you hiding behind roles, expectations, or distractions? And what would it mean to choose yourself? Not the ideal self, not the approved self, but the real one, here and now. Share in the comments which idea from Kierkegaard resonated with you the most. And remember, the secret to an easy life is not the absence of anxiety, but the courage to walk with it, letting it guide you toward a life that is honest, inwardly grounded, and truly your own. In a culture that glorifies certainty, Kierkegaard teaches us to live with uncertainty without collapsing into despair. Peace does not come from eliminating anxiety, but from relating to it truthfully. Anxiety becomes destructive only when it is denied. When acknowledged, it becomes guidance. Applied to everyday life, Kierkegaard's philosophy invites radical inward honesty. Pay attention to where anxiety appears in your life. Ask what possibility it is pointing toward. Examine where you may be avoiding choice by hiding behind habits, routines, or expectations. Notice where you seek safety at the cost of authenticity. Becoming a self is not a destination. It is an ongoing relationship with responsibility. Kierkegaard reminds us that life cannot be postponed until clarity arrives. Meaning is revealed only through commitment. Waiting for certainty is itself a way of avoiding life. To live fully is to accept that some questions will remain open and to act anyway. As this reflection comes to a close, take a moment of silence. Ask yourself where you are avoiding anxiety by avoiding choice. Ask yourself which part of you is waiting to be acknowledged, not perfected, but owned. And consider what it would mean to choose your life inwardly, even if that choice feels uncertain, even if it feels lonely. An easy life, in Kierkegaard's sense, is not a life without tension. It is a life without self-deception. When you stop running from anxiety, when you stop betraying yourself for comfort, something subtle but profound happens. Life becomes lighter, not because it is simpler, but because it is honest. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel, leave a like and a comment, and follow us for more personal training videos towards an easy life.